So I want to try to hit this with as light a touch as possible, because life is good, and these happen rarely for me. But this process of maybe I don't have kids, so maybe that's a good example. So if you have children and your kid really wants to do something, I was at the pool.
You don't have kids, then you can't possibly know.
I know.
You can't possibly know the struggle that people with children are living. We're just playing.
I know, but people say that.
We know. And it bothers you.
That does bother me, yes.
Yeah, you got to get over that.
Okay.
Because what number of children should I have? 1? 27? When you start playing that game of making yourself feel better because you're sensitive to people who are critical of you, what you discover is they're fickle and they're only looking at you for a moment, and they're not a good thing to measure yourself against. It's fleeting, and it never has anything to do with you. It's always their stuff.
So I guess for me the final question is when you're bumping into people, and let's use kids as an example, and I saw these kids that really wanted to stay at the pool and their parents wanted to take them home because they needed to go home. The kids weren't super happy about it. I've heard you say something like, the kids are so aligned to source, and this is crazy, but do you let the kids stay at the pool while you go home, or do you do you understand what I'm saying? How do you make that sort of...
Well, so since you don't have kids, you don't have a problem.
I know.
So from your perspective, here's the way we would stay in alignment about this. We would acknowledge that all of them, parents and children, are having a step one moment because they have a disagreement about what they want. And since they've hooked themselves together and they believe that they must have the identical experience of either all being there or all going someplace else, it's very convoluted. You couldn't get to the bottom of that if you spent all day talking with all of them about, in other words, you could tell the children that you need to be considerate of your parents, and you could tell the parents you need to be more considerate of your children, and you could tell the parents they're tuned in, tapped in, turned on, they're having a good time, you're old fuddy-duddies, why don't you get tuned in, tapped in, turned on? It could go round and round and round and round, and you would never find any resolution about it. So what do you do in a situation like that? You ask yourself, am I having a step 5 moment or a step 1 moment? If you're having a step 5 moment, then as you're acknowledging that, you're acknowledging that they're having contrast that is serving every one of them. You know that these kids are launching rockets of desire, and you also might acknowledge that none of them are under the influence of source. All of them are disconnected from source. Therefore, all of them are feeling the pinch of being disconnected, is too strong a word, but pinched off from it. And every one of them is blaming the other one for the way they feel, which is going to get them nowhere. So what you acknowledge is this is a step 1 moment that they are all having, and I'm having a step 5 moment as I'm observing them having a step 1 moment. Unless you've got something stuck in your vibrational craw and it's activating all those times you didn't get to stay at the pool, and it's bringing up for you all of the injustices because while you don't have kids, you were a kid.
Yeah, sure.
So it gives you an opportunity to know if you've got something stuck in your vibrational craw, which you don't need to have now. Understanding the laws of the universe can free you from all of that just by acknowledging, am I under the influence of my inner being or under the influence of something else? Esther is discovering something really interesting. This will help you. So Jerry, some of you are aware of Jerry or knew Jerry. Yeah. Jerry was deliberate about life long before he met Esther, and they lived a really happy, deliberate life together. And Jerry was a businessman, and in his process he had business beliefs that were sort of guarded in nature. And Esther, for a long time, he reemerged 7-ish years ago, for a good part of that time, even up till yesterday actually, Esther felt obligated, is not quite the word, motivated might be a better word, to hold to his standards, use the word, or criteria, in order to honor the wisdom that she knew was his. Even though when he reemerged into non-physical, he let most of that guardedness go. So now Esther's honoring who he was, not who he is. Isn't that interesting? That'll twist your brain into a little knot. So what we're talking about is the continuum. You see, you have in your vibration some of your parents' vibration and their parents' vibration and their parents' vibration. There are all those things you learned in school and all those things you learned from everybody. But everything that you learned and everything that you keep active, a belief is just a thought you continue to keep active. Everything that you keep active is playing against who you really are and what you really know and what your inner being, or in this case, in this example, what Jerry is knowing. And so you have all kinds of unnecessary hang-ups because you learned them from people who were not under the influence of source, who were having a hard time. So much of what society believes is the right or wrong way to behave is from a guarded stance that has never served anyone. And then most of you just spend your lifetime after lifetime, squabbling over the rules that you have devised that never served anyone. And so many feeling not free and then blaming the rules or blaming each other for not feeling free, when your freedom is in your hands. It's as simple as choosing this rather than this, choosing to be under this influence rather than that influence.
And standards are just a clever word for saying that we're just putting rules on things that we think are right that could be completely contrary to what our source or our inner being is telling us. It's not necessarily bad, but
we had a conversation at the beginning today about goal setting, or the difference between being motivated or inspired. People around you are wanting to motivate you to do it the way they would like you to do it, because these parents, if they've really put their foot down and if they've really trained their children, what I say goes. And I know you're going to have a good time in the pool today, but at some point you're still going to be having a good time and I'm going to be over it. So you need to just know that while you're still wanting more, I'm going to have had enough, and you need to do what I say, which means you're going to bring your desire to a screeching halt, and you're going to replace that desire with obedience. Got that? Because if you don't have that, we're not going to the pool at all. That's sort of how the physical world treats you, because they don't understand that everyone can have what they want, that in this vortex is what everyone wants. Parents don't want to go leave their children at the pool alone. They've got all these guarded things. They don't have any idea how things could unfold, and they don't even realize that if they were tuned in, tapped in, turned on, they would be as eager for this new fun pool time as their kids are. There's really not a lot of point in trying to sort out all of the behavior. In fact, you bring us to something really important to contemplate here. What we're really talking about, come right along with us, you're really going to like this. What we're really talking about here is me in my human form trying to orchestrate situations so that there's a physical outcome that will be pleasing, as compared to me in my physical form lining up with who I really am and feeling joyful in this moment, regardless of what the activity is. It's the difference between controlling a condition and having a response to it, or being unconditionally aligned with love and the universe responding to that. It's the difference between having a knee-jerk response to something that's happening and being under the influence of source and controlling the response. Can you hear the difference? It's like you've decided that you're going to vacuum your beautiful floor, but you're going to skip a step. You're not going to plug the vacuum cleaner in because the plug's way over there, the cord's long and awkward, so you're just going to skip that step. So you just move the vacuum all around on the floor, get under everything. If there are rugs, you leave tracks on them, and you don't really get the job done that you intended to do because you left out the most important thing, which was getting plugged in first. And that's what a lot of people do. They go through the motions of the action without getting plugged in first, and then they blame the way they feel or the unhappy results that they're getting from the others who they are involved with.
Even though to somebody from outside, it would look like they accomplished the same thing. It could actually be completely different. Somebody outside couldn't see it's plugged in. They're like, oh, look how responsible they are vacuuming their floor.
Well, that's because, and we're just going to say this, thank you very much. Most people are so willing to go through the motions of life, lip service and motions of life. As long as I look like I'm having a good life from the outside, it doesn't really matter how I feel. That's what most people are doing. Only thing that matters is how you feel. because you're an extension of source energy. And source energy is joyful. And when you are not letting yourself be an extension of source energy, then you are not who you are. You're pinched off from who you are. Lovely.
Abraham, as always, I appreciate the directness of the feedback. I know we can get it from source, but it's always wonderful to hear it straight to the point.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.